25 years ago, in the heart of the business district, stood the headquarters of Meridian Tech *, a symbol of a successful tech giant. The building's glass towers gleamed in the sunlight, reflecting the ambitions and achievements of a corporation that had become one of the leaders in its industry. Every floor of the building was meticulously designed, with marble floors, expensive furniture, and state-of-the-art equipment creating an elite atmosphere, accessible to an average employee only through perseverance and luck. Jessica Harris was one such employee. A young black woman full of determination and ambition, she quickly climbed the career ladder, becoming one of the leading software specialists at Meridian Tech *. For her, the job represented the realization of her hard work and drive. But her journey wasn't easy. To gain recognition, she had to overcome not only work-related challenges, but also the hidden discrimination that followed her in professional life. However, Jessica had grown up fighting for her place in life, and working for one of the country's largest companies was a major victory. At the time when Jessica began her career at Meridian Tech *, Victor West, the company's CEO and founder, was already a respected figure in business circles. At 50 years old, he had gone from being a small-time entrepreneur to leading a successful tech giant. Victor was known for his strict but fair management style, charisma, and relentless pursuit of success. He was considered a man who had everything under control: business, family, and his impeccable reputation. Yet, there were many sides of his life hidden from the public eye. It was then that their paths crossed. Jessica caught Victor's attention due to her outstanding work results, and she started spending more time with him, initially on work projects, and later in informal settings. Their romance began with late project discussions that evolved into personal conversations, continuing outside the office. Victor, nearly 20 years older than Jessica, was married, but this did not deter him. He believed that his life could accommodate such distractions and that they would not affect his career or family. To him, the affair was a way to diversify his routine without considering the consequences. For Jessica, the relationship with Victor was far more meaningful. He seemed to her to be a caring, charming man who understood her and supported her aspirations. Jessica hadn't planned to be the reason for his family's breakdown, but she could not deny her strong feelings for him. She allowed herself to believe that perhaps their relationship could lead to something more than just a fleeting affair. But one day, everything changed. Jessica found out she was pregnant. Initially, this news brought her confusion and fear. She hesitated for a long time before telling Victor, knowing that he might not react favorably. Yet despite her doubts, she resolved to inform him. Victor had to know, and she hoped he would take responsibility for the situation. When Jessica, mustering her courage, entered Victor's office, her heart was pounding. The office, with its glass walls offering a panoramic view of the city, suddenly felt cold and alienating. Victor listened quietly without interrupting her, but when she announced her pregnancy, his face became impassive. His reaction was cold and indifferent. He did not express anger or concern. He merely stated that this was an inconvenient situation. The next day, Jessica found her access to work projects restricted, and a few days later, she was summoned to HR and informed of her layoff due to staff reduction. Victor didn't even bother to inform her of his decision personally. Soon, she discovered that her name was on a blacklist, and all companies connected with Meridian Tech refused to consider her resume. Her career, which she had built over the years, collapsed in an instant. After the dismissal, Jessica tried to find work, but her efforts were futile. She encountered closed doors and cold rejections, which invariably came in the form of, "We cannot offer you a position at this time." With each new refusal, it became clear that her previous life in the tech industry was over. Jessica had to take temporary jobs just to make ends meet, and the future seemed frighteningly uncertain. Despite all the difficulties, Jessica did not abandon her pregnancy. She knew it would not be easy, but she was determined to keep the baby and raise it, regardless of how much her life had changed. With each passing day, her confidence grew stronger. She found strength in overcoming any obstacles that arose and refused to let the past define her future. Jessica was starting a new life, one in which she would be a mother and fight for a better future for her child. Every day she felt a growing despair and injustice, but at the same time her resolve to endure grew. In her small apartment, which she could afford, Jessica prepared for the baby's arrival. The modest setting, devoid of luxury, underscored the new reality she was about to face. But despite these changes, she did not lose hope. Standing by the window of her apartment, Jessica pressed her hand to her belly, feeling the faint kicks inside. This was her future child, her future, which now depended solely on her. She knew it would be difficult, but she also knew that together they could overcome any adversity. 25 years after the events that changed Jessica's life, her son Alex Harris, a young man with ambitious plans and a strong character, was beginning a new chapter in his life. Alex always knew that his mother was a strong woman who did everything possible to provide him with a decent future, but he never suspected the hidden hardships she had faced. Alex grew up making do with little, but Jessica always tried to instill in him the confidence that he could achieve anything if he worked hard enough. After graduating from university with honors and receiving several job offers, Alex chose Zenith Dynamics *, one of the largest tech firms in the country. To him, Zenith Dynamics * seemed like a place where he could build a brilliant career, fulfill his dreams of professional success, and perhaps ensure a comfortable life for his mother. He was proud of his achievement and was eager to start working at such a prestigious company. However, when Alex informed his mother that he had accepted a position at Zenith Dynamics *, he noticed a strange unease in her eyes. Jessica didn't openly show her concern, but her reaction was less enthusiastic than he had expected. She knew that this was the same company that Victor West, the man who had ruined her career, once led. Although Victor was no longer the CEO and no longer managed the company directly, his shadow still hung over the place. Jessica could not forget that Zenith Dynamics was once known as Meridian Tech, the company that had shattered her life. Despite her worries, Jessica did not reveal the truth to her son. She merely warned him to be careful and not to trust people blindly, without explaining the source of her concerns. Alex interpreted this as maternal care and a slight nervousness about his new life stage. He didn't attach much importance to it, as he was confident in his abilities and in the fact that he had earned everything on his own. On his first day at work, Alex arrived at Zenith Dynamics early in the morning to make a good impression. The massive glass and steel building towering over the city seemed to symbolize all the opportunities now open to him. Inside, everything appeared ultra-modern: spacious halls, glass partitions, and the latest technology, creating an atmosphere of dynamism and success. Employees in business suits hurried about their tasks, and Alex felt a slight thrill at becoming part of this world. After an introductory meeting with HR and familiarizing himself with the company's policies, he was taken to the floor where the software development department, where he would be working, was located. His workspace was in a spacious open office with a view of the city. The atmosphere was one of focused productivity, the quiet hum of keyboards, muted conversations, and constant movement of employees bustling between their desks and conference rooms. On his first day, he was introduced to the team leader, Mr. Lowry, a man in his 40s with a penetrating gaze and a confident demeanor. Mr. Lowry was a strict but fair supervisor, immediately warning Alex that high results and the ability to work under competitive conditions would be expected of him. For Alex, this was exactly the kind of challenge he was looking for. However, as Alex got to know his colleagues and immersed himself in the work, he noticed that his name sparked a slight curiosity among some employees. It seemed that people discussed something whenever he walked by, and then conversations abruptly stopped. Alex attributed this to the usual curiosity about a new employee, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more behind it. During one of the breaks, on his way back to his department, Alex accidentally found himself on the floor where the senior management offices were located. There he saw Victor West for the first time, the man who had once led Meridian Tech * and was its founder. Although Victor no longer held the position of CEO, he was still involved with the company as a board member. Despite his age, Victor looked confident and composed, his gray hair neatly styled and his suit fitting him perfectly. Alex couldn't help but notice how, during their brief exchange of glances, Victor's gaze lingered on him longer than it should have. It was a fleeting but meaningful moment. Victor's eyes briefly expressed something like surprise, but then he quickly returned to his usual impassive expression and continued his conversation with colleagues. Alex felt a strange sensation, as if he had been noticed, but he didn't understand why it made him uneasy. That evening, returning home after his first day, Alex felt tired but was full of enthusiasm. He told his mother about his impressions, but Jessica listened with attention she tried hard to conceal. He mentioned Victor West, and for a few moments her face froze. Although she quickly regained her composure, Alex noticed the change in her mood. She asked him about his work, carefully avoiding the topic of Victor, but her anxiety was evident. Jessica feared that her past might somehow catch up with them, although she had spent years trying to forget everything associated with Victor and Meridian Tech. The shadows of the past were beginning to rise again. Alex, unaware of the depth of the events, was simply striving to build a career and succeed, not knowing that changes were about to come that would make him reconsider everything he thought he knew about his past and present. The day after his first day at Zenith Dynamics, Alex Harris began immersing himself more actively in his work. Now he knew his place in the office, the daily routine, and had even managed to get used to his first tasks. The environment was gradually becoming more familiar, and he was trying to quickly get into the work rhythm. Alex had always been diligent and determined, and this immediately became noticeable to his colleagues. Working at the company required high concentration and the ability to perform under a fast pace. Zenith Dynamics was at the forefront of technological innovation, and employees were expected to give their maximum effort. In the software development department where Alex worked, there was constant active work on new projects, and it seemed like every day brought new tasks and challenges. Nonetheless, as Alex adapted to his new position, he began to notice subtle details that caused a vague sense of unease. His colleagues were friendly, but there was something subtly strange in their attitude towards him. Sometimes he caught glances that lingered too long or noticed conversations falling silent whenever he approached. Alex attributed this to his newness in the team and the natural curiosity of employees wanting to know more about him. However, the feeling that there was some kind of mystery surrounding him lingered. Alongside his work, he could not get rid of the strange anxiety he had felt after meeting Victor West the previous day. Although it was only a brief exchange of glances, Alex somehow felt there was something significant about it. Being in a junior position, he knew it was unlikely he would see Victor again anytime soon. Still, the thought of the former CEO stayed with him. Alex couldn't understand exactly what had affected him so deeply, but somewhere deep inside, he felt that this meeting had a greater significance than it initially seemed. A few days later, Alex learned from his colleagues that Victor still regularly visited the office as a board member and actively participated in important company discussions. This knowledge only fueled his interest and inexplicable concern. Now, as he worked in a company connected to this man, he was curious to learn more about Zenith Dynamics' past and Victor's role in its development. Alex began to spend more time reading the company's history, reviewing old articles and reports. In the process, he came across information that the company used to have a different name, Meridian Tech. This surprised him. Although rebranding is not uncommon in business, Alex had never heard of such large corporations completely changing their name. The article he stumbled upon described how Victor West, with an ambitious plan, transformed the company to create a new image and reputation for Zenith Dynamics. The official statements claimed it was for strategic restructuring, but some minor details in the account seemed odd to him. One day during lunch at the office, while he was talking with some colleagues about his career, Alex mentioned that he had been interested in the company's history and had learned about its old name. This sparked an unexpected reaction. His colleagues hesitated and quickly shifted the conversation to another topic, as if they didn't want to discuss it. Alex felt that the subject was, for some reason, undesirable. Over time, his sense grew that there was more to the company's history than could be found in public reports. Alex began to wonder why events from Meridian Tech's past caused embarrassment and evasion among employees. He also recalled his mother's reaction when he chose to work at Zenith Dynamics, and now her strange unease seemed more justified. As the days went by, Alex continued to perform his duties, but his thoughts increasingly focused on the questions that had begun to arise about the company and Victor West. He couldn't ignore the feeling that all these details were not just random. He started to suspect that there might be some connection between his family's history and the company he now worked for. Meanwhile, Jessica, his mother, was feeling tense. Every day when Alex came home, she anxiously asked him about his work, trying to catch any hints that he might have learned something. She could see that her son had begun to suspect something, and she feared the truth might come out before she had a chance to explain everything to him herself. Over the years, she had learned to hide her fears, but now, with her past beginning to resurface, it was becoming increasingly difficult. Alex sensed that his mother was hiding something, but he didn't want to trouble her for the time being. He continued to work and secretly investigate the company's history, hoping to find answers to the questions that were gradually filling his thoughts. Several weeks passed, and with each day, Alex felt a growing tension around him. Work at Zenith Dynamics continued as usual. Projects, meetings, discussions of new developments. At first glance, everything seemed normal, but at a deeper level, he could not shake the feeling that the shadows of the past were closing in around him, unseen but palpable. The events of recent days heightened his suspicions and made him wonder what was hidden behind the facade of this successful company. One evening, when he returned home from work, Alex found his mother in the living room, sitting with a cup of tea in her hands. She looked tired, and her face bore an expression of tension that she tried to conceal. In recent weeks, Jessica had been particularly anxious, which did not escape her son's notice. He saw that she often avoided his gaze and tried to change the subject whenever his job at Zenith Dynamics came up. But this time, Alex was determined to find out what she was hiding. The evening was quiet, but there was something intangible in the air, as if everything in the room had grown heavier. Alex watched his mother for a long time, pondering how to start the conversation. He understood that the answers to his questions lay not only within the company walls, but also here, at home. Jessica noticed his tense gaze and sensed that Alex was close to uncovering the truth, perhaps closer than she had expected. Her son slowly approached, sat down on the sofa across from her, and looked at her for a long time. He felt that she was hiding something, and it troubled him deeply. Alex knew that if his mother was so worried, it had to be something significant. Finally, he decided to ask her directly what had been making her so nervous in recent weeks. Jessica, realizing that there was no point in delaying the conversation any longer, sighed and looked at him with deep regret. She had always tried to shield Alex from the painful truths of her past, but now she recognized that it had become impossible. Too many things around her were starting to remind her of Victor West and the times when her life had taken a sudden turn. She began to recount her past, starting from when she worked at the company, then known as Meridian Tech. Jessica tried to speak evenly, but as she continued, memories of pain and disappointment overwhelmed her. She talked about how she had started her career, poured all her energy into the job, and met Victor West. Victor was her boss, a man who, despite his position, became infatuated with her. Jessica did not go into detail about their romance, but Alex could sense a note of bitterness and regret in her words. Then she moved on to the most painful part of her story, when she found out about her pregnancy and decided to inform Victor. She recounted how she had hoped for support and understanding, but instead faced his cold and indifferent rejection. Fearing for his reputation and career, Victor did everything to get rid of her. She was dismissed under the pretext of staff reduction, and then she learned that she could no longer get a job in other companies due to the blacklist she was placed on at Victor's command. All the doors that had previously been open to her were now slammed shut, and she was left alone, with a child on the way and no chance to return to her former career. Alex sat in a daze, listening to her story. He couldn't believe that his own mother, whom he had always known as a strong and independent person, had gone through such betrayal. Nor could he reconcile with the fact that his father, a man he had never known, and about whom he knew almost nothing, was the one who had treated his mother so cruelly. Jessica continued talking about how she fought to survive, taking any job she could find to provide for herself and Alex, how she tried to move forward and give her son a better future, despite everything she had endured. She omitted many details, not wanting to fully reveal the bitterness and humiliation she had experienced, but Alex understood that her words concealed enormous pain. He felt a mix of anger, disappointment, and confusion. Over the years he had asked about his father many times, but Jessica had always dodged the question, saying only that he was not part of their lives. Now, Alex realized she had been trying to protect him from a painful truth. But the truth was much heavier than he could have imagined. Now everything fell into place. His colleagues' strange behavior, the subtle tension at the company, even the evasive glances from employees when the topic of Zenith Dynamics past came up. Alex realized that he had been working in a company that had once destroyed his mother's life, and that the man he occasionally saw in the corridors, Victor West, was his father, who had abandoned them to their fate. After that conversation, Alex's mind was filled with a myriad of thoughts. He didn't know how to react or what to do next. He felt that he had to take action, but wasn't sure what exactly. His world had been turned upside down, and now he was faced with a choice: to continue working at the company that was part of his painful legacy, or to try to find out more and perhaps seek justice for everything that had happened. Jessica, noticing her son's deep thought, felt guilty for keeping the truth from him for so long, but she also knew that Alex had the right to know, and it was better for him to hear it from her rather than learning it accidentally or from other people. She only hoped that now, with the truth revealed, they could find a way to heal and move beyond this past together. After the conversation with his mother, Alex could not find peace. His entire life seemed to have been turned upside down when he learned that Victor West was his biological father, the man who had betrayed and ruined his mother's life. This truth struck him deeply and filled him with a growing anger. He could no longer look at Zenith Dynamics the same way. Now the place seemed to symbolize deception and injustice. Every time he walked past Victor's office, he was overwhelmed with mixed feelings: hatred, anger, and a desire for answers. Alex made a decision. He needed to confront Victor and speak to him face to face. This man had no right to hide behind his high status and avoid responsibility for what he had done. Alex knew his actions might have unpredictable consequences, but he was no longer willing to stay silent. One evening, when most of the employees had already left for home, Alex stayed in the office and began planning the best way to meet with Victor. He knew that suddenly appearing in the boardroom would be reckless and likely end in failure. He needed to find a moment when Victor would be more vulnerable and unable to avoid the conversation. Alex recalled hearing from colleagues about Victor's habits. He often stayed late and sometimes remained in his personal office, working alone. This could be his chance. The next day, Alex once again stayed late after work, hoping that Victor would still be in the office. As evening fell, he headed to the upper floors where the senior management offices were located. On a floor that was usually bustling and noisy during working hours, silence now reigned. The corridor lights were dimmed, and only a few offices remained lit. Alex walked down the corridor and, to his surprise, saw that Victor's office door was slightly ajar. Approaching closer, Alex peeked inside and saw Victor sitting behind his massive wooden desk. His face was illuminated by the soft light of a desk lamp, and he was engrossed in reading some documents. At that moment, Victor looked like an ordinary man, not the powerful businessman everyone always depicted him as. Alex suddenly felt a wave of doubt. This was the man who had betrayed his mother, but now before him sat not a ruthless mogul, but an old man, weary and perhaps even vulnerable. Alex decisively entered the office and stood before Victor's desk. Victor looked up, and his face showed surprise mixed with slight irritation upon seeing the young man. For a moment, there was a tense silence in the office. Victor, quickly recovering, tried to maintain his composure and asked what had brought Alex here at such an hour. But Alex did not waste time on pleasantries. He began with a direct statement. "I know who you are, I know you're my father, and I know what you did to my mother." Victor's face paled for a moment, but he quickly regained his usual impassive expression. His eyes narrowed, and he stared at Alex, as if trying to gauge how serious the young man was. Victor had not expected this part of his past to resurface, especially in this way. He tried to speak calmly and confidently, as he was used to handling all matters in his life. Initially, he claimed not to understand what Alex was talking about, but his voice betrayed a slight unease. Alex did not relent and continued. He told Victor everything he knew about his betrayal, how he had fired Jessica, closed all doors in the industry to her, and left her alone, without means of support. Alex demanded explanations. Why did Victor act that way? Why did he abandon his mother to fend for herself? Realizing that evasion was no longer an option, Victor changed his approach. He adopted a cold, businesslike tone, trying to calm the situation. He said that the story was complicated and that Jessica might have exaggerated its consequences. He offered to settle the matter, saying he was willing to pay compensation, if necessary, to close the issue. His words sounded like an excuse, an attempt to simply get rid of an inconvenient problem by using money to which he was so accustomed. But Alex was shocked by such a response. He did not want money or compensation. He wanted acknowledgement and remorse. He felt that Victor still did not grasp the full seriousness of his actions and was not ready to take responsibility. Alex directly stated that he would not close this issue so easily. He wanted Victor to admit his mistakes, to understand that his actions had destroyed not just Jessica's career, but their entire lives. Victor tensed up. He was already beginning to lose his patience, realizing that the young man was not going to back down easily. He tried to remind Alex that, essentially, he was working for his company and that this conversation could negatively affect his career. But Alex, undeterred by the threats, did not back down. He was not afraid of losing his job if it meant standing up for his mother's honor and seeking justice. After the conversation, a suffocating silence hung in the office. Alex felt that he had reached a certain turning point in his confrontation with Victor, but the final victory was still out of reach. He turned and left the office, leaving Victor alone, sitting at his desk, lost in his thoughts. Alex knew that this conversation was only the beginning of a long journey, and he had no intention of stopping. Now he was determined to seek the truth and not let Victor avoid responsibility for his actions. The conversation with Victor left Alex feeling unsettled. He understood that achieving justice would not be easy. Victor had not acknowledged his guilt, and his attempts to settle the issue with money only deepened Alex's disappointment and anger. Now, he was determined to see this matter through, even if it meant going against the company's founder. Alex knew that his actions could lead to unpredictable consequences, but he could no longer return to his former life, pretending that nothing had happened. The next day, when Alex arrived at work, the office was unusually abuzz. Colleagues were whispering quietly, and the atmosphere felt tense. He noticed people looking at him a little longer than usual, and conversations would fall silent when he walked by. Alex quickly realized that his meeting with Victor had not gone unnoticed. Someone might have seen him in the corridor near Victor's office, and given how many people were interested in senior management affairs, rumors could have spread quickly. By midday, Alex learned that Victor had suddenly canceled several important meetings and had not been seen in the office. This was uncharacteristic of him, and there was a sense of intrigue in the air. Colleagues speculated, but no one knew for sure what had happened. Alex suspected that their conversation might have had a greater impact than he had anticipated, and that Victor might be trying to deal with the aftermath or prevent information from leaking. Meanwhile, Alex decided to act more decisively. He knew that the only way to expose Victor was to tell his story. Alex contacted a local newspaper journalist, Lisa Brooks, who specialized in business investigations and had published exposés on corporate malpractices several times before. She had a reputation as a journalist, unafraid to go up against major players, and Alex felt she might be the person to help bring the truth to light. He met Lisa in a small cafe on the outskirts of the city to avoid unwanted attention. Alex told her everything, starting with Jessica's story, her dismissal, and blacklisting, and ending with his recent conversation with Victor. Lisa listened attentively, not interrupting, her eyes burning with professional interest. She quickly realized that this story had the potential for a real scandal and could impact Zenith Dynamics' fate. After hearing the story, she asked Alex a few clarifying questions to establish the timeline and confirm the details. Lisa promised to begin her own investigation and verify all the facts before the material would be published. Soon after their meeting, the situation at the company began to rapidly develop. The next day, a wave of rumors swept through the office. Some employees began discussing that the management had known about past reputation issues and had tried to conceal the connection between Meridian Tech and Zenith Dynamics. Alex noticed that the looks from colleagues became more tense and wary, especially from those who had been with the company since the Meridian Tech era. Now he felt under the scrutiny not only of Victor, but of the entire staff. A few days after meeting with Lisa, a newspaper article came out exposing Victor and recounting Jessica's story. The article presented documents and testimonies confirming her dismissal and blacklisting at Victor's behest. Lisa also wrote about Victor's recent meeting with Alex, adding that Jessica's son now worked at the company once led by his father. The article sparked widespread public outcry, and the corporate scandal flared up anew. The board of Zenith Dynamics could not remain silent. The company faced inquiries from investors, business partners, and even government agencies involved in labor relations oversight. The board members understood that the company's reputation was at stake. The issue of potential legal consequences and the need to respond to the accusations became central at upcoming meetings. Victor tried to defend his position, claiming that all this was part of events long ago, that no longer related to the company's current situation. He insisted that the story with Jessica was merely a misunderstanding and that he was willing to settle all matters out of court. But the pressure on him increased, and the meetings within the company grew increasingly tense. The board realized that continuing the conflict could damage not only the company's reputation, but also its financial performance. A few days after the scandalous article was published, it was announced that Victor West would officially resign from the board and no longer be involved in the company's management. This decision was made to protect the interests of the company and its shareholders. The official statement sounded formal, but everyone understood that it was a forced measure to try to minimize the damage from the escalating crisis. Alex felt conflicted. On the one hand, he had achieved justice. Victor could no longer hide behind his position, and his betrayal had become public knowledge. But on the other hand, it did not bring the satisfaction he had hoped for. Reality proved to be much more complex than he had anticipated, and even after the truth was revealed, he felt not relief, but rather emptiness. Alex knew that his actions had affected Victor's and Zenith Dynamics' fate, but the main thing was that he had exposed the truth and defended his mother's honor. Her pain and suffering were finally known to the public, and although it wouldn't restore her former career, justice had at least partially been served. After Victor was forced to step down from the board and his name became associated with scandal, significant changes began at Zenith Dynamics. The company's leadership sought to restore its shaken reputation and regain shareholders' trust. Alex felt that his actions had marked a new stage in the company's history, but for him, it was only the beginning of a personal journey toward inner liberation. For several days following Victor's resignation, there was a tense atmosphere in the office. Alex was the center of attention, not just among colleagues, but also in the public eye. His entire story, now public knowledge, made him a subject of discussions and speculation. Some employees looked at him with admiration, others with distrust, and some even with condemnation, considering him a traitor who had brought scandal into the company. Alex realized that staying at Zenith Dynamics no longer made sense. This place was part of his past, but not his future. One of his last days at the company, Alex decided to meet his mother at their favorite cafe. Jessica was quiet and thoughtful. The recent events had left their mark on her, reminding her of the pain she had tried to forget. Nevertheless, there was pride in her eyes for her son, who had dared to stand up for the truth. They drank coffee and talked about the future, feeling a lightness in their conversation for the first time in a long while. Alex confessed to his mother that he was going to leave Zenith Dynamics. He had realized that he could not continue working at a company that reminded him of Victor's betrayal and Jessica's suffering. For him, it was an opportunity to start anew, free from the shadows of the past. Jessica supported his decision, knowing that he needed to find his own path, unburdened by the weight of family history. After submitting his resignation, Alex felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. His life now had new possibilities, and he was determined to move forward. But before leaving the company, he decided to take one final step that would truly close this painful chapter. Alex found out that since leaving Zenith Dynamics, Victor had mostly stayed at his country house, avoiding public appearances and contacts with journalists. Alex decided to meet him one more time. He knew that their first conversation was just the beginning and that he needed to finally resolve this conflict to move forward. Victor's country house was far from the city's hustle, surrounded by dense forests and high fences. When Alex arrived, the evening sun was already setting, casting long shadows over the house and its grounds. He knocked on the door, and after a few moments Victor himself answered. This time, he looked different, more tired, and even older. His face showed a mix of surprise and fatigue upon seeing Alex at the doorstep. Alex entered the house, and they both headed to the living room. The spacious room, decorated in a strict modern style, seemed empty and lifeless. Victor offered him a seat, and they both sat opposite each other, separated by a coffee table. The room was filled with tense silence, interrupted only by the ticking of an old clock on the wall. Alex began to speak without preamble. He said he hadn't come to accuse Victor, but to finally learn the truth. Now that everything was out in the open, he wanted to hear from Victor whether he understood the harm he had caused to his mother and to him. Alex looked directly into Victor's eyes, waiting for an answer that might provide some closure to this painful story. Victor remained silent for a long time, his face expressionless, but then he sighed heavily, and something resembling regret appeared in his eyes. He admitted that he had indeed been frightened when Jessica told him about her pregnancy. He feared ruining his career, his reputation, losing his family. But in doing so, he thought only of himself and didn't consider the consequences for Jessica or their future child. Victor said he realized that his fears and his desire to protect his life had led him to destroy someone else's. His words sounded sincere, but Alex felt that it was not enough. Then Alex asked one final question. Why had Victor never tried to find them, and at least partially make amends? Victor, lowering his head, said that he had once attempted to do so, but then realized he didn't know how to deal with what he had done, and simply backed off. He had lived for too long believing it was easier to leave the past behind than to confront its consequences. It was his greatest fear, the fear of admitting his mistakes and facing those he had wronged. Alex listened attentively, but there was no longer the pain and anger that had tormented him before. Instead, there was an understanding that Victor was merely a man who had made a terrible mistake and had been unable to correct it. Alex realized he no longer wanted to spend his life consumed by hatred and revenge. He rose from the chair and told Victor that he forgave him, but this forgiveness was not for Victor's sake, but for himself and his mother. He explained that he wanted to break this chain of resentment and start a new life, in which the past would no longer determine his future. With these words, he left the house, leaving Victor alone with his regrets and unfulfilled hopes for redemption. Returning home, Alex felt truly free for the first time. He began to plan his future, which he saw outside the world of technology and corporations. Instead of continuing a corporate career, he decided to devote himself to working with youth, helping children from disadvantaged backgrounds realize their potential and fight for justice. He wanted to give them what he had lacked, the opportunity to believe in themselves and not fear moving forward, despite past mistakes. Jessica supported his decision, understanding that Alex had found his path. She was proud of the person her son had become and saw that now they could both live without the weight of past grievances. Alex and Jessica could finally move on, leaving behind Victor and his actions. The story ended not with a loud triumph or the downfall of everything Victor had built, but with a quiet yet significant act of forgiveness. Alex realized that true justice lies not in punishment, but in the ability to overcome pain and become better despite everything. Now that the truth was revealed and the shadows of the past dispersed, he felt there were many opportunities ahead for building a life free from betrayal and pain.